Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to have you on this webinar series this afternoon. This is Financial Inclusion Africa platform. We're organizing this in honor of our women, especially celebrating the African International Women's Day, the year 2022. We're breaking the barriers. The topic of discussion this morning is simple and straightforward in alignment with the theme for International Women's Day. The topic is financial inclusion, breaking the gender bias in Africa. And today we have a lot of people on the platform watching us on all the streaming sites this afternoon, morning, depending on wherever you are, and on the space of the world. It's nice to have you here. I won't take much of your time because people are ready to deliver, people are ready to listen, and people are ready to contribute. Like I said, if you're not contributing at any point in time, kindly mute your microphone so that we are not interjecting with the discussion of the day. I'm going to invite the moderator, the chair lady of this event. It's no other person than Esther Adiola Balogun. She's going to take over from me right now, and the event coordinator will lead the discussion this morning. Esther Adiola Balogun, it's over to you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayowa. Good afternoon, everyone on the call. Thanks for joining us today, March 30th, 2022, as we join Financial Inclusion Africa to celebrate the International Women's Day 2022, where we all have decided to come break the bias and discuss issues that are surrounding women, financial inclusion in women, how women can also break the bias via financial inclusion. It's been a very long journey in financial inclusion. I'll just do a brief introduction of myself. I'm Esther Adiola Balogun, the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer, New Women's Microfinance Bank. New Women's Microfinance Bank is a financial institution in Lagos, Nigeria, where we owned by women for women. And our mission and vision is to support women entrepreneurs in financial services, to encourage them and empower them financially. And so this afternoon, on this call this afternoon, we have exceptional women who have also broken the bias in various sectors of the economy. You should know this is an African thing. It's not just, we are not just in a Nigerian, a Nigerian-based organization. So we have people from Kenya, from South Africa on this call, who would also be shedding more light into financial inclusion, breaking the bias. How do we break the bias for women in financial inclusion? And so I would like to call on Tariro just to introduce herself. Let's meet Tariro. While after Tariro, we'll meet Ruth, and we'll also meet Tolu Babajide after Ruth. Tariro, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Esther, and good day, everyone. My name is Tariro Nyimo, and I am the Deputy Divisional Director for Digital Frontiers Institute and the Digital Frontiers. I am also the CDFP Program Lead, that's the Certified Digital Finance Practitioner Program. My background, I have been a regulator. I have worked for a bank, and I have also worked for a fintech. And now I am in capacity building at Digital Frontiers. Digital Frontiers is a specialist capacity building company based in Cape Town. I am a Zimbabwean who's living in Cape Town, and our programs really are to build capacities within the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Inclusive Finance Program, which CDFP falls under, is really to build capacity within financial inclusion. It really is at the center of financial inclusion. So thank you, Esther. That's it about me.
Thank you. Hariro, you're welcome. Ruth, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. So my name is Ruth Njuguna. I am from Nairobi, Kenya, and it's a pleasure to join all of you. I work for an organization called Octagon Africa. I am the general manager in charge of client servicing and customer experience. I have a wide background in financial services, largely in pension management, insurance, and employee benefits. So I also do capacity building for executives at different levels as far as financial services are concerned. I also have a background in business administration. I do a lot of strategy and leadership programs as well, as far as financial training and capacity building is concerned. And it's a pleasure to share a bit of the knowledge that I have together with everyone who has joined in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Tolu Lokwe, you have the floor.
So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tolu Lokwe Babajide, and I'm the Financial Inclusion and Gender Manager at the SIO Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited. SIO Consulting is a management consulting firm that is committed to transforming Africa's agriculture and nutrition landscape. And we work collaboratively with both public and private sector to conduct agricultural value chain analysis. We also launch innovative businesses and ecosystem solutions, as well as implementing sustainable agricultural development programs. I am very passionate about women's economic empowerment, and I also write on these issues a lot, as well as speaking in, having this sort of discussions with other speakers from across Africa and the world as well. So it's a pleasure being here today. Thank you, Esther, for having me.
Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll definitely say that everyone we have in this webinar today is very, very special. You're all welcome to the webinar, and I would enjoin us to use the chat box, to drop our questions, should you have any question. And if you would like to direct your question to a particular speaker, you can just put the name of the speaker in front of the question so that the speaker would know that you're directing the question to him or her. Like the administrator mentioned earlier, I would also implore us to also put our microphones on mute when we're not speaking, so that we can enjoy the session as much as possible. Okay, so we go straight into the session. We all know that the fight for gender equality has been waged for well over a century. And while there may well have been strides made in that time with greater representation of women at all levels in business and government, and signs of progress towards wage equality in certain corporates and sectors, there are still significant barriers that prevent true equality from becoming a reality. And I'm sure that is why, the question, breaking the bias in financial inclusion came up, for us today. And so, Tariro, I would like you to take this for us. So, are women really vulnerable to, digital financial, digital financial risk, and in what ways are they vulnerable? What digital and financial skill and other factors could women deploy just to mitigate this risk?
Okay, thank you, Esther. I think that women are vulnerable to DFS risk. And I think that's digital financial services. And I think we should have context here that it's mostly low-income women and possibly those in rural areas. So we're talking about women who have less agency than all of us who are here in this webinar. Those are the vulnerable women that we are fighting to be included. We know that from the statistic from the Findex, the 2017 one, we have 1.7 billion unbanked, and 50% of those are women. And then when we're talking about digital financial services, and the inclusion of women, most of these women are then included on a mobile device through mobile money. And now let's take a look at the gaps in the ownership of mobile devices. I think globally there's a 7% gap. So we are new to the game of even owning the device. And then now we need to transact on that device. So the trust issue here is how we're vulnerable, because it's our money. And you know, if you are a person who is in the rural area and you get some money, you know you've worked hard, possibly doing some agricultural activity to earn this money. So already this is, since you're price sensitive, you are just sensitive about your money. So that's where the vulnerability comes through, as well as looking at trust. And then even if you have the device, I think there's a statistic in India that talks about 51% gender gap in reading the text and sending the text. So it could be a language issue. And when we talk about women being left behind, we're already being left behind in terms of our education. So maybe language is an issue, and this is in different contexts. And I know in my culture, it's more beneficial to educate the boy than the girl. And I know that we've been making progress towards this, but already it's our mothers and some of our sisters who've been left behind. And now we have to transact on this device, and it's in English. So, you know, already I'm vulnerable there. And then it's my privacy as well. You know, now that people are accessing my information, there's a risk there about what are they going to do with my information. And because already I think I am left behind because of my education, I feel like I don't know enough, and therefore I'm vulnerable. So that also holds us back from possibly doing as much as we should on the devices. Now, we're talking about how to mitigate this risk. I think the literacy campaigns can work, just so that we can build trust and we can build more confidence in using the solution. As well as just, if you are a fintech providing that service, it should just work. It should just work. The technology should just work. And therefore, it builds my trust. If I'm sending money, it should send. And I should know that my money has been sent. I should have confidence that my transaction has gone through. And there are lots of ways that you can also, as a fintech or as a financial services provider, make sure you give women who are vulnerable this confidence. And of course, because we're talking about rural frontiers, where we possibly are accessing them through agent networks. So it creates that opportunity of training the agents so that they can train the person who's receiving that service. And this could be a low-income woman. This creates that opportunity for more education there. So yeah, so those are some of the things. And I know that the regulator can also implement some strategies to mitigate this risk to consumer protection. But I think I'll end there, Esther.
Okay, thank you very much, Tariro. Okay, so Tolu, I would take it up with you, Bruno, from where Tariro stopped. Tariro mentioned the gender gap. She was talking about the data, and from the little data I have, from the World Economic Forum, which also shows that in the Global Gender Gap Report of 2021, it shows that an entire generation of women would have to wait for this gender parity. And in that report, it was also calculated that closing the global gender gap, increased from about 99 years to about 135 years. And in sub-Saharan Africa, where gender parity sits at about 67%, the gap, can be closed slightly quicker, maybe in 121 years. So that means, for us in sub-Saharan Africa, we would have to wait for about 121 years for this gap to be closed. And we also know that the pandemic, the pandemic has also shown us that this gap would keep opening or has been reopening. Even for some of the gaps that has been closed, we have discovered that a lot of them have been open. And I would also, put to you, say that for some women, during the lockdown, a lot of women, especially those in the consumer sector, the non-profits, media and communication, a lot of them could not, really do their job. And so I would really ask you, do we really have gender bias in financial inclusion in Africa? Do we really have gender bias? And if we do have gender bias in financial inclusion in Africa, what practices have led to this bias? So,
okay, thank you very much, Esther, for the question. And I would say that yes, there are biases. It's not just one bias that we are dealing with here now. We are dealing with a lot of biases. And definitely gender play a significant role in formal financial inclusion. And I'm using the word formal because it will also be very untrue if we astute that, before now, we've not had some informal financial services that is going on among women. But when we look at women and when we look at this gap, we know that what we know basically is that women are less likely to be formally included due to some factors. Why is it that in Africa, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, that I have more context on, poverty is highly feminized. When you think about a poor person, the first picture that comes to your mind is that of a woman, right?
yeah.
And that is how people perceive people that are poor. It's the picture of a woman, and this is not, this is because of some certain factors. We have women that have, due to lack of income or low income. So we have women that are working, and that's why I'm joining the two together, the lack and the low. So we have women that are also working really hard, but the income is very low. And lack of education too. We will typically have more women that are less educated compared to men that are less educated. We also have this lack of trust in financial services. Men are more trusting when it comes to financial service providers, and men are more open to dealing with financial service providers compared to women. But while we have all these various factors here and there are particular biases that have been aired for a long time by the financial service providers and also the people. And what we do with the norms, we have norms too that are contributed to to the gender gap. But I will go straight to two biases that I've identified. And the first one is, and thank you, Tariru, for touching on when we are talking about women that are excluded. We are really talking about the women, the low-income women. We are talking about women in the rural areas. And for a long time, there has been a bias, when designing women products, women financial products, that women, the group women, the gender women is a singular group, or it's a monolith. And what I mean by monolith is that all women are the same. So they categorized women as a block rather than having sub-blocks, because all women are not the same. Majority of financial service providers for a long time have held on to this bias that women are the same. So because of that, we are going to design the same financial products for women, not considering that their social, their educational, their religious, their location differences, living condition differences. A woman that live in the urban area, our reality, what her needs are, is totally different from a woman that lives in the rural area. And so for a long time, they've been I would say a whitewashing of around the way products have been designed for women, without really understanding the various contexts that we have in the, that we have when dealing with women. Women are different. So the financial products that are being pushed to women should be different. There should be a special consideration, a special knowledge of the various demographics that we have within the women, within the gender called women. It's very important. And also, there should not be a one size fits all. I think that is the most, that is the one error that, the financial service providers cannot run away from. And I know that, yeah, I'm also talking to Ruth here because she is the financial service provider. We can't have a one size fits product. It is a bias and it should be broken. Another bias that we have, and for a lot of people, and it's not limited to financial service providers now, even to us as people, is that rural women who are the ones that are being mostly excluded in the financial inclusion index, is that the rural women have limited financial needs. It is also a bias. That someone lives in the rural area does not mean they have limited financial needs compared to a woman in the urban area. There are so many needs, financial needs, that a rural woman has, but we've just decided that, because of the living conditions, because of the location, what else could they need financial services for? And that is the bias that we've held on to for a long time. And when you were talking, mentioning the practices that have led to these bias, I would say that we have certain norms, we have certain cultural, religious, and social norms that have led to how women are perceived. Perception matters when we talk about financial inclusion and we talk about gender. So we have social norms that people we have norms around identification. In some of the areas where we work at SAIL Consulting, there are some areas where women do not even see themselves as individuals. So for example, I'm going to paint an example now in which you are trying to open a bank account for a woman in rural areas. And you ask for a phone number, you ask for a national identification number, and the number that she gives to you is that of her husband. And she assumes that that is hers. That is to tell you that, there's a lot of behavioral change there's a lot of behavioral change that around, the way women perceive themselves, in the way that women see themselves. That is the practice that has also led to rural women being seen as having limited financial services. Another practice also will be, I wouldn't call it a practice anyway. I will call it not our non-intentionality when it comes to serving the demography, both for the financial service provider and both for the government. How intentional are we when it comes to, serving the demographic of, rural women or even peri-urban? Have we taken time to segment the different sub-demographics within the gender called women? How intentional are we to work with, with other parallel ministries in ensuring that women are truly seen, women are truly known for who they are not lumped together? So I think for me, that is very, very key. But that will be all from me for now.
Thank you so much, Tolu. You actually, broke the ice for me there. And that will take me straight to Ruth. Tolu has thrown some challenge to you. And so taking it up from where Tolu stopped, what roles do regulators, supervisors, funders, providers, she has he has casted so many of us that are financial service providers, saying that, oh, we have not done well when it comes to breaking the bias for women in financial inclusion. So what role, what proactive measures do you think we can take? And then what role do you think the regulators, the funders, the service providers would have to begin to play? Now, remember, Tolu mentioned that we have to be intentional here. So how intentional can we be as regulators, as funders, and as service providers in order to break the bias in financial inclusion for women? Thank you.
Thank you, and I accept the challenge. So really, maybe before I even start, the interesting question that we need to answer is that despite women having more financial discipline and better saving habits than men, it's still an interesting fact that you find women still lag behind in terms of most financial indicators. And therefore, the role as financial players in the market have is to create access to products useful and affordable that every other party, irrespective of their gender, are able to access. And in terms of addressing, first of all, the risks that come with these particular products, I think Tariro mentioned before, we have issues of fraud, data misuse, the lack of transparency when dealing with agents, sometimes is inadequate redress mechanisms, especially where women fall prey to part of their male agents, and sometimes agency-related risks. One of the key things is that as a result of these particular risks, you find that women therefore become vulnerable and then have less confidence in terms of investing their money or handling it properly. They end up making poor financial money decisions, or they even fall prey to inappropriate advice. And in that context is where the regulators, the supervisors, and the funders come in with their different capabilities and roles in trying to shape this particular culture. And first is where policy comes in. So the policymakers are therefore mandated to come up with impactful policy changes where they are intentional about bridging the gender parity, but more importantly is access of these services becomes more attractive to the women or the gender that is less popular. And once those policies have been implemented or have been put in place, we have the supervisors who come in terms of enforcing compliance and ensuring that indeed the guidelines that have been put in terms of policy are being enforced, and those who fail to enforce these policies are treated as the law, the full force of the law is taken against them. One of the other key things that these policymaker supervisors is an issue of peer learning, exchange programs and peer transformation. Having groups come together in terms of sharing the knowledge, experiences, and these financials even fund those particular associations that drive those particular agenda in financial advisory, associations that drive financial inclusion activities, financial education and literacy, especially to the women population. Product knowledge, just ensuring that even access of these products, awareness of these particular products, how to use them, the consumption is also one of the key roles that the three particular individuals or entities play. There's the issue of market conduct and consumer protection. We have seen largely within the financial services sector, guidelines relating to treating customers fairly in terms of the practices, are there redress mechanisms. You find that even central banks are now largely integrating consumer protection provisions for specialized framework activities and ensuring that even gender bias, gender-based risk issues are being incorporated in those particular elements. There is also proactively taking steps to promote responsible usage and of digital financial services, guidelines that have been set by all parties, and where players within the market fail to adhere to them, what action be taken, what redress mechanisms are there to compensate the individuals who are using those particular products. There is use of data analysis just to assess, collect data and help regulators in designing appropriate consumer protection regulations, and especially bringing in women into the conversation. I mean, I talked about the financials funding programs that elevate women's voices, support consumer associations, which are largely under-resourced, but are promoting programs that enhance financial literacy. And more importantly, I mean, all parties concerned taking a more customer-centric approach with women, because I mean, the customer is a person who needs these services, and more largely the women who are at the center of driving financial growth. The World Bank estimates that half of the population in the country is women. However, they only generate 37% of the global GDP, which makes investment in women financial and economical issues not only just a moral and social issue, but also a critical economic challenge that all of us should come together and try and resolve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I knew you were going to hit that, really hard, and we really thank you and appreciate you for that contribution. Take home for me here is the role of enforcement by regulators and consumer protection. And I can say that for us in Nigeria here, there was a serious enforcement that happened, some weeks back. As regards the digital financial services, it was about, there's this loan, do I call them fintechs? Okay, money lenders who use the loan app to do lending. And the truth is, for us in Nigeria, it's been very, very, consumers' right has been breached. I would say that using those apps. And so we see that these financial service providers have, taken it to the extent where the consumer no longer enjoys his or her peace, and we have also discovered that women are the worst hit when it comes to issues like this. So Tariro, I'm going to come back to you. Tariro, are you there? Is Tariro there? Okay, so I'm going to come back to you. Now, from various research, we have also discovered that, over-indebtedness has shown to be an outcome of combination of DFS, of digital financial consumer risk for women. A lot of women, Tolu mentioned, demographics and all that. And she also mentioned that, the urban woman needs are different from the rural woman needs. And so you discover that digital financial service providers just bring one product for women and they just push it to the woman. And because these women are not so educated, they do not have financial literacy, they just take the products the way it comes. So, and research has also shown that it leads a lot of these women into indebtedness. I will tell you, in Nigeria, it's really, really bad. The rate at which, before now, we have the demography, or the research says that, women are better, women are better lenders or better borrowers than men. But recently, we have come to realize maybe, okay, from the pandemic period downwards, you just discover that, women are becoming grossly indebted. And it's as a result of this financial service risk, because you just open your app, you have an Android phone, you open your phone, you get an advert from about 3 or 4, digital financial service providers appealing to you, or, throwing out various options to you. So how do we mitigate this risk? How do we protect women from this risk of digital financial service, of over-indebtedness?
Yeah, thank you, Esther. So I think that the women, and I'll keep going to the vulnerable women. So when we get these micro credits in order for, income smoothing. I think that's the term. When we just want a cushion for just before we get our next income. Right? So then we get these micro credits that are being offered maybe over your mobile. And you get excited because you've received this cushion and it has worked. And then some more products keep on getting offered to you. And the goal is really to create a safe environment, but that is also accessible. Remember, we wanted women to participate in the financial system, in the digital financial system, so that we can offer them more that will improve their lives, right? The North Star is really ending poverty, improving everyone's well-being. But in this, so I see, us creating an enabling, the regulator creating an enabling environment, as well as the financial services providers creating solutions that are customer centric. And I think that Tolu talked about this, giving the relevant product to the relevant person. And really that being an anchor in everything that we do in terms of designing products for women. And I know that Ruth also spoke about a lot of consumer protection issues that the regulator can do. All of these play a big part in how we protect the vulnerable women. So I know that, if you are going to launch a microcredit products, and you talked about all these lenders that are coming in and offering women things. So before they can offer this credit in the market, surely then they should, and I think this has been implemented in Kenya, and Ruth can also speak to that. You should, and other central banks, I'm sure, you should then register this product with the central bank so that we can give us the pricing. So we can do some stress testing to see how in certain scenarios, vulnerable women become at risk of this over-indebtedness. So this is one way that the regulator can actually curb all these many providers coming and then causing this over-indebtedness to women who may be vulnerable, who may think, okay, maybe I can get another loan. And I would be careful to say that some groups or lower income groups of women are not cautious or are take just risks. I wouldn't say that, but it maybe is a psychological issue or getting excited, or and that needs to be managed in the market. So, and then coming back to designing of products, we can and I know this then speaks to how we pick the data, how we do credit scoring, and the bias that can come in there. Sometimes, really, when we're doing these algorithms, we are measuring what they say is, and I read this somewhere, willingness to pay. My behavior can show that I am willing to pay. I'm a good citizen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I have capacity to pay. So I don't know, when we're designing the algorithms there, when we're picking up data that will give us the score in order to say how much is going to be the loan and can I really afford this loan, in the algorithms, they should be, of course, unbiased, and also try and measure really the capacity for me to be able to pay back that loan. And I think that's about it for me for now, Esther.
All right, thank you very much, Tariro. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Tolu. You have spoken so much on. Okay, so you have spoken. You've told us. Okay, so what can the regulator? What can we do? You've told us, yes, there are biases. There are biases. And I know Tariro has spoken to, okay, so what we can do. Can you stress further on the measures that we can take to abate some of these biases that we have around? You've mentioned the biases. So what measures can we take? Tariro has spoken to some of them. I know you'd also have, some input to add to that. So you have the floor, please.
Hello, Esther. Can you
Yes,
hear me?
yes, we can hear you today.
Okay, can you take the question again, please?
Okay, so I asked, I said, in line with what Tariro shared, you have also, you mentioned some biases. And then I'm asking, okay, so what are some of the steps that we can also take aside from what Tariro has shared? Can you just add to some of the things Tariro shared that we can take
Okay.
to abate and stop?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Esther. So I wanted to also touch, before I move on to the main question, to talk about, it's not a bias. I will not call it a bias. I will call it a misconception about women and women's financial inclusion. I think in this past decade, the only thing that we've heard about women's and women's participation in financial services has really been anchored on women's access to credit as a major need for women. So you will typically hear a financial service provider just talking about, and this is just tying it with what you, the question that you asked Esther about that you asked Tariro about indebtedness of women to all these microfinance banks and apps, and I would say that the greatest need of a woman when it comes to financial services is not access to credit. It is also a serious misconception. That is not the greatest need. The greatest need of a woman when it comes to financial services is capability and capacity. Literacy and capability. It is very important. A woman that understands fully the financial services, that knows the various channels, that understands what she needs to do on a savings account, what she needs to do on a current account, what the charges are, that woman is less prone to, to be thrown at, at the various, I call them Sherlocks, at the various Sherlocks that we have right now. When a woman is knowledgeable about about financial services, she's able to make informed decisions, financial decisions. And that is why financial capability has become so integral to financial inclusion. So access to credit is not the greatest need for a woman. It is financial capability. It's financial literacy. A woman that is literate it is so rare for that woman to fall prey to the various Sherlocks. While the government might put in place regulations, while the government might do a lot of advocacy, but it still boils down to a woman having this knowledge. A woman understanding what she needs to do. Oh, if somebody comes to you to offer you a 10%, interest rate, looking at what you have or the capacity of what you can take on, you are able to make an informed decision and say, oh no, I can't take a loan that has a 15% interest. I can't take a loan that has a 20% interest. But if a woman is not able to make that informed decision, that is where the problem is. And we will constantly have this issue. So capability is very important. And I'm going to go into the question and what we can do, and which I've answered in the first leg. It's about ensuring that as part of our advocacy, as part of the program implementation when it comes to financial inclusion, we are really integrating financial capability trainings or communications into what we are offering women. Women must be informed. When we talk about financial well-being, what are we doing to ensure the financial well-being of women? We can only do this by ensuring that we are training on capability. The communications that we are pushing to women is centered around financial capability. That is how we do it. And I'm going to give an example. At SIOC Consulting, there's a program that we have now called the Advancing Local Dairy Development in Nigeria. That is the ALDIN program. It is a program that seeks to catalyze the emergence of a local dairy sector. in Nigeria. And when you talk about local dairy sector in Nigeria, we are talking about women that are major stakeholders in this value chain. Women are the major stakeholders. Nomadic Fulanis, women they are the ones that are. So what we've done is to be able to integrate, connect them to formal processor, bring them from that informal sector to the formal sector. That means that a woman typically would dairy milk to the market and go long distance, to go and hawk and make milk. Now, as a processor that is coming to her to offtake milk, that is a business transaction between her and the business and the processor. But what we've done is that we do not encourage cash transactions between the processor and the women dairy farmers. We've then set out to open accounts for the women dairy sector. And it was in this bid that we realized that there are so many barriers that women face rural women face when they want to open an account. For everybody on this call now, it's so easy for us to open an account. Am I right, Esther? Am I right, Tariro? It's so easy. All we need is to walk into a bank and open an account. But when opening accounts for, when facilitating bank accounts opening for rural women, it takes a village. It takes a lot of people. We're talking about the SIM vendors, because most of these women do not have phones. They do not have SIM cards. So they do not have an identity card. So you're probably bringing somebody that will register them for their national ID card. You are bringing the SIM vendor. You are bringing the BVN, that is the bank verification number vendors, ensuring that they have a BVN. So it takes a lot of actors to ensure that women are able to open accounts, bank accounts in rural areas. But in doing this, what we've realized is that in breaking the norms, we have to be innovative. We can't, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. What we see in Kano State is different from what we've seen in Kaduna. It's different from what we've seen in Adamawa. It's different from, that means that for each of these challenges that we've encountered, we are responding innovatively. So I would say in breaking the bias, innovation is critical. We cannot, copy and paste as it is when it comes to changing the dynamics. So when it comes to breaking the bias around financial inclusion for women, we have to be ready to face contextualized challenges, and we have to be able to design contextualized innovations and solutions. And that is why it's important. For example, in some program sites where we work with banks, we work with niche departments in the bank. And I'm saying niche department. I'm not talking about the bank itself. I'm talking about the micro banking unit. I'm talking about the gender banking unit. In some instances, we are working with payment service banks to open e-wallet accounts, because we realize that the KYC that is needed for a typical bank savings account we are not able to meet up with it when it comes to, so an e-wallet account which only uses a phone number is what we are using in some instances. So it's very important that we are innovative when we are breaking the bias. Another thing that is important is that we integrate men into the programming. When it comes, I'm a development person, I'm a management consultant. So when I look at issues, when I look at problems, I look at it from that angle, from that private sector, angle. And it's important that, we are not disruptive when it comes to changing the norms, because disruption will not allow us to accomplish anything. While it is good for women, for us to have gender equality, for women to be able to, do all of the things, but we are also dealing with decades, century-old norms and cultural, religious, and social norms. So when going into the rural areas, it's very important to work together with the men to ensure that they are also our champions. They buy into what we are bringing. They are the ones driving this change, because we cannot disrupt. An attempt to disrupt in the communities or in the rural areas will backfire. So for me, I would say that in breaking the bias, working with men is very critical. Men are not the enemies at all, but men can actually be champions. In our program, we have various men champions that help us to herald the gospel of financial inclusion. And most times, I've even found out I'm always on the field, and there are some instances where the women will be against opening an account. The women will be the ones that are really, really against, having a bank account. And you will see the men advocating and say, can you try it? Is it possible? And we're talking about very remote areas here. So men are not the problems. Men are actually can be allies. So in breaking the bias, we need to work with men. Thank you.
Wow, Tolu, thank you very much. Men are also champions in breaking the bias. They are our allies in breaking the bias. And, innovation is very key, very important in breaking this bias. We do not have to be destructive when we are breaking the bias. We need to shatter the glass ceiling, but we don't need to shatter it in a destructive way. We have to be very innovative when we are shattering the glass ceiling. Thank you very much, Tolu. I hope attendees have their questions ready. By now I expect that we would have dropped questions in the chat room so that Tolu, Ruth, and Tariro can also do justice to those questions. You can also share your thoughts. If you don't have questions, you have some thoughts you feel you want to drop, you can also drop your thoughts and share your thoughts in the chat room. And you can also, do a raise of hand if you would like to do that at the moment. Okay, I'll come back to you, Ruth. So I said so much about what we can do to break this bias, how we can break the bias and all that. Okay, I would go back to the organizational setting. Ruth, you are breaking the bias in Octagon. That I see, and that I know, even from your profile, from the way you spoke today, you're breaking the bias there. And so, if you look at your sector and other sectors in financial services, what are some of these organizational biases that we think, women in financial inclusion now, women who are service providers in financial inclusion can also break? So Lua said that men are our allies. And I know for some organizations, for most organizations, when they bring out their human resources policy, they tell you, oh, there's gender equality. And in the last few years, I've seen a lot of women in the boardrooms doing great and doing awesome. So what biases do you think that, women can also, they themselves as women can also break, in organizations when it comes to women who have financial inclusion service providers now? What biases do you think we can also break ourselves? Tolu has said men are not our allies. As a matter of fact, during this International Women's Day, a lot of people have insisted that the issue that we have is not men. The issue we have is the women themselves. So what biases do you think women themselves can break, even in financial inclusion, in our places of work and in our various organizations? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you have rightly observed. We women are the ones who are supposed to break those barriers. We shouldn't rely on the men to help us break those barriers, because that in its own is enabling us depend or not necessarily helping us break the bias. So it has to start with ourselves. And I would use a very basic example. When we are growing up as women, or even the stereotypes, you're always told you are a girl, you should play with a doll, a boy should play with a truck. You should look for the warm colors, red, pink, those are the things that you should wear. So it has consistently been drummed in us that you are a lesser sort of gender and you should always portray yourself to be that. And that is what has created this gender parity. But I believe we as women within our different spaces in the financial services sector, we need to get out of that. And one of the key things is stereotyping, just like you have rightfully observed. Men are linked to high career, more intensive quality jobs, and women, we put ourselves out there as less confident. We can't be able to undertake some of these activities, yet we have the potential and we have the capability. So that is one of the barriers that we need to actually break. Then there is also the participation in quality jobs. You'll find that women are always underrepresented in very senior positions. And women, and they're also represented in low-paying jobs. Yet you find most of the women, even in a similar capacity in terms of qualification, experience, and academic credentials, are probably at par. But it is that lack of self-confidence that puts us in that position. Yet you can also create your own seat at the table and demand what is rightfully yours. There is the issue of vulnerability that I think where we become, we have had experiences of objectification or harassment. I think setting up associations that can deal with redress and taking up those issues that are different policy and even advocacy against such issues can also play a key role in eliminating those biases. Unequal education levels. We have the STEM education where science, technology, engineering, and such kind of technical courses are largely associated with men. So if we can pick up that more often than not, as opposed to arts, then we play at an equal level ground with our fellow gender, and therefore we are able to take up more positions. There is the gender pay gap, and this is largely our own making. So you find a lady and a man within the same position. We as ladies always fear to rightfully request or ask for what we are worth. So we always feel like this man is has more capacity, and because he's the breadwinner, he's the sole provider and, at home, they are the ones who are expected to have that higher value. Yet we deliver and generate the same value within the organization. So us as women rightfully asking for what we are worth and what we can benefit and for the value that we generate for the different organizations that we work for can help in reducing that gap over time. And of course, the financial and digital exclusion as a result of lack of skills is also something that we can quickly pick up in terms of getting ourselves educated, acquainted with the various entities. The good thing is that over time, we see that the indices that cover multiple dimensions show that, these inequalities have been shrinking substantially over the last century because of education, because of advocacy, but also one of the other things that perhaps should be considered even as we look at the biases is that women more often than not suffer low incomes in comparable occupations because of our shorter working life. Meaning when we are going to get children with employment interruptions, and all these have got an impact on our financial security. I know the government has, and even other organizations have taken a lead role in terms of just putting up guidelines that will enable that environment in terms of payment of leave, taking us back to the opportunities where we were even before us childbearing. So some of those initiatives those biases can be broken by us as women, but also it is a collective responsibility between the organization, the policy-making entities, and even the individuals who benefit from the growth or the reduction of that gender parity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you. You actually spoken well for the question. You know, as girls, when we're growing up, they tell you, "Oh, pink is your color." it's a girl's color, and so your stereotypes to think, oh, I'm a girl, so I should always behave like a girl, and they tell you, oh, that table is for guys, not for girls. So part of the bias that we need to break that you just mentioned is stereotyping, and in various organizations, just like I am. I'm the MD of a microfinance bank. I have men on my board. I have men as staff that we work together. And I think the men they've been fair enough. They've been fair enough, just like Tolu said, they are not our problem. They've been fair enough. So we would ourselves as women in the sector of financial inclusion, we need to get up and take the bull by the horn and run as fast as we can. I also like to add that we also need to get the level of education that the floor is open for everybody. The sky is too, like somebody said, the sky is too big for everybody to, we are too much. If the sky is too big for every one of us to run, from my perspective, I think it's a question of our mindset as women or as ladies. We need to also get the kind of education we love to have. Somebody could say, oh, childbearing could also hinder the education. Well, after giving birth to that child, you can also go back to school and get education that will help you sit at the table and take the challenge the way we ought to take it. Okay, so there's a question here in the chat room from Injideka. She says evidences show digital finance risk hits women the hardest. What are these risks and how do we manage? I think Tairo, that was the first question Tairo answered when we came into the session. She was talking about fraud and data misuse and all that. Tairo already answered that. I don't know if Tairo would like to just do like a 30 seconds answer to that question. It was something you mentioned in the first question you answered in the session, talking about digital financial DFS risk that hits women. I knew you were talking about fraud and all that. So maybe you just help this person with just a few lines of the answer before we go to the next question.
Okay, so maybe I can add into the privacy issue. When women are transacting on a digital platform or on a mobile, the sensitivity to our information, and then just being tricked, the phishing and all of this, maybe you just hear about it, but you're not so sure, and someone can send you an enticing SMS, and then you end up revealing your information, maybe because you've been promised something. Women could be vulnerable to some of those things that come with transacting on a digital platform, as well as it also ties into being offered microcredit, all of these things, and then you end up in a certain financial risk that you were not anticipating. Because so those are some of the things that I can just add that make some women vulnerable when we're transacting in the digital form.
Okay, I would also like to add, just like to emphasize that women need to also get enough education when it comes to digital financial services. A lot of women do not read, they do not, understand the terms and conditions before they get into this, this financial services transactions. So we all need to engage in literacy. We need to educate as many women as possible. Even the urban, Tony was talking about the rural women, even the urban women. A lot of them do not understand, the nitty-gritty of some of these services that are rendered, because there are some clauses in those terms and conditions that when you understand them properly, you would also think twice before you get involved with them. So I think financial literacy and knowledge and enough education. When I talk about education, I'm not saying you have to go to school. You have to, we have literacy when it comes to digital financial services. Okay, Emmanuel Wukoro asked the question, and I would appreciate if, I don't know whether Tolu would like to take this.
Okay.
Looking at development since your teenage years as a woman, as any of you, the panelists, ever faced a bias in getting included financially, it will be good to share some of these cases so we can also learn from your approaches to breaking these barriers to inclusion. Would you like to take that on?
So for me, I don't. So when we talk about bias, I would say that I'm not. I would not categorize myself as someone that has faced the bias. But I think for me, it is really about not having understanding about, and I'm being honest here, not being financially literate enough, and not being financially capable enough. You know, ever since I was a teenager, I remembered growing up. I grew up in a rural. And maybe that's why I'm very passionate about rural women. I grew up in a rural town. It's a town, but big, quite big. But I remember entering the college for the first time, the university, and my dad took me to the bank to open an account. So I think that for me is very empowering. A young adolescent. I was like 16, 17, 18 then. But they took me to GT and I opened my first account. But from that time till maybe to my late 20s, I would say that I was very financially illiterate. Even though I had access to financial services, I was not really literate when I look at the certain decisions that I've made over the years when it comes to financial decisions. You know, I would have loved to have better understanding, better knowledge about what to invest in, what sort of investment I should make, what sort of investment houses I should stay with. But then it was particularly for Nigerians there. But Esther will remember this time when 2009, 2010, that was the boom of financial services in Nigeria. It was crazy.
Yes.
Everybody was coming out with their own stock options, right? The investment houses, they were like just pushing it. The way we have Sherlock's then, I remember being a youth corper, and I typically I would invest all my money on buying stocks, but I didn't know anything about these stocks that I was buying. I didn't have any understanding. I was just following the crowd. And if you ask me today, of all those stocks, am I able to even know where they are? I would say no. So if I had enough understanding, enough knowledge, I was literally literate, I would have been able to buy good stocks. Even though I understand that there is also downsides for the good stocks, but I would have been able to even track where my investments, because now I can't track any of those investments that I made in those years. So for me, it's really about capability. Literacy is very important, you know, for me. But I don't think there has ever been a time that I've, been had a particular bias against me. I would just say generally from the side of women's economic empowerment, it's always important for women to be economically empowered.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Ruth, do you want to take on the question? Okay, Tariro, let's hear you share.
Thank you, Esther, only because I'm short of time. So I wanted to share my experience. So when you're buying a car or when you're trying to get a mortgage, you get a lot of information thrown at you, especially when you're trying to buy a car. And, there's some hidden things that you really need to read. I found that when you are dealing with possibly salespeople, car salespeople, they think they can get away with a lot when they are speaking to a woman. That's the perception. That's the perception. You have all of these options and interest rates balloon and then this and then, you know, and it can get confusing. So I found that as a woman, I had to be extra careful, you know, because there's a lot of hidden stuff that might be thrown at me because they possibly know that I know very little about buying cars, because my men possibly buy more cars and they talk about it at the bars. I don't know. They talk about the different things. So they're educating themselves. When we sit down and as women, I don't know if our conversations really get into, hey, and then you buy this car and then you're going to get these options. And then, you know, also when you're buying insurance, I find that they ask you if you're married or if you're not. And I often wondered, what is it? So if I'm unmarried, I'm in a different risk category. But if a man is unmarried, are they really in a different risk category? Okay, so, and if a woman is married, is she now in a better risk profile than me? You know, so all of these things, this data that they ask, and then they profile you based on that data, causes bias. Yeah.
Okay. Emmanuel, I'll just give me a minute. I'll be with you. I'll mute you. Speak shortly. Ruth, do you want to take a shot on the question?
I probably would just, yes, I would probably just echo what both Tariro and my other co-presenter has said. It's most of it is largely, I mean, the biases largely stem from stereotypes. So the assumption that a lady has lesser knowledge, the fact that, I mean, men are more confident, of course, they're going to be given a table. However, if you look at all these elements, they stem from lack of literacy. And what is literacy? Literacy is basically, do you have a basic understanding on critical concept? Do you know, I mean, what inflation rates, diversification, because those are the elements that help you in terms of decision making. But over time, once you are able to consistently prove to the other gender that you have the same capability, so if I'm given a job that is equally concentrated as a man, I am able to outperform, I am able to generate or demonstrate that I have value, or I am able to just create my own seat at the table and deliver value beyond what the expectation of the people who are seated at the table. I believe you are able to break that gender bias, I mean, naturally. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think this conversation has really been very, very interesting. I just want to kind of bring in my own high-level summary of what I've been hearing so far. So Ruth, Tariro, Tolu, Esther, what makes you people really different from the unbanked woman is that you are economically empowered. And there are some things that I feel have driven your economic empowerment. Education is a plus. The kind of parents, the kind of upbringing, the kind of environment you also grew up, largely contributed to how positioned you are. And I'm sure today there are some job openings that you will step into to do an interview. It will be difficult for the male gender to come ahead of you just because, again, you have what it takes, right? So you have a voice. Issues regarding women economic and the ability to make your own decision, you have control over privacy, your bargaining power, all of those factors, you can create opportunities for yourself given the education that you have, and the career, the CV that you have built over the time. But again, these were really are really standing on some building blocks, which again could be from parental upbringing, how exposed your parents were, the opportunity to education that you have. So if we say what separates you from these unbanked people is that you are really economically empowered, which also means that financially you are literate, and that also impacts on your financial health, which means you can plan your economics, you can plan your finances, you can plan for your children and all of those. So that takes me back, to the three level of women we are looking at here. One is a class that you, the panelists actually represent. The woman, we are trying to get every woman, every other woman who is unbanked or underbanked to really come to that level. right? Where you can build cultivables, you can build income, you can build wealth, you can build, things that give you access to, to other economic indicators that make livelihood, better. Then if you now look at the second category, which is really the excluded woman, I can go to the north and look at those people who live in hut whose husbands do not allow them to come out, their husbands do not allow them to come out. Again, there is little we can do. And I love what I heard when they said the men are really stakeholders in this. We can reach these people through their men by first changing, because there are some cultures, some norms that are hard fixed. We cannot move the goalposts, you are not going to be able to bring those women out, to start doing some certain things. I said in the north over 10 years ago, if I remember clearly, and these were some of the issues. They never come out. If they ever come out, is to go to the farm, and once they come back, they go into their huts again. They do everything. So the compound is very large and they have small huts inside. The major gate, no man can go inside. If we were to do immunization, it's only women that are allowed to go into those, those compounds. So there are some hard fixed norms that we cannot break except we walk through the men. Then again, so the rurality, the setting, actually affect this kind of people. So we need the men really to work with these people to be able to get. I'm sorry you're hearing some background noise, but just be able to try and round up. Then let's go to the other woman who is educated, who has some level of financial inclusion. You understand? So when we really talk about financial inclusion, what gives the woman ability to be included is really the economic inclusion of it. So there are many women today who work, who earn a living, but financial health is really zero. And that's really the story that I think Tolu was trying to share the other time. I don't know if it was Tolu. Yeah, I think so. So for her, she had an account, but she didn't really know a lot of things about planning and all of that. So which also means that when we are thinking of including some persons, we also need to build financial health for the third category of women, which is really about building financial literacy, financial health tools to help them to plan, and become independent, have to be able to create opportunities for themselves. If you look at the conditional cash transfer program, for instance, of the federal government, money gets to a lot of persons in Nigeria, a lot of women, but they see it as free money. They are unable to put it into a productive use in that sense, because financial health is, financial literacy is low. And because of this, they are unable to build in the financial in terms of planning, in terms of saving, in terms of managing risk, even anticipating that there is going to be a risk, so let's say for children's health and their hospitals, let's even say for our own businesses, that small shop where I sell, if it collapses, if there is fire outbreak, am I able to, recover? So they don't have insurance. How can we begin to train them to know about microinsurance and all of this? So what I hear, and I really appreciate from this conversation, is the fact that we want to get some women to, the level where these panelists who have spoken to us today are, and right, because for us, you are the face of, the woman that we want every Nigerian, even African woman to become, rise to that level. You can create opportunities for yourself and you are economically empowered in that sense. Then, but again, there are those who are completely excluded, which we will need more, than just getting to educate them. We need stakeholders to work with them. We need to change some cultural norms, but they are really difficult. And I'm not saying we cannot change all of them. For instance, time poverty is a problem. A woman delivers and she's out of a job for 3 months. She lives in Nigeria and she's working in VI, part of Lagos, for instance. It will take 3 hours to commute with a baby and also to come back. And again, there are things she needs to do at home. She is time poor, you understand? And some of them, they are forced to abandon their jobs and they go on long maternity leave, up to 6 months, up to even 1 year. And by the time they come back, they find it difficult to catch up. We also need policy interventions in this area. Why can't we, have women have extended maternity leave? Why can't we reduce the workload for them? Why can't they work remotely, and redefine their job, specification description, so that they are not alienated? You understand? So if the woman was a breadwinner, she couldn't cope, especially in an African setting where the mother-in-law is always on the woman. You need to give me a grandchild. So these are some of the issues we will need to speak to in that area. Then the third one is really about how can we partner with existing stakeholders that are doing something already in the area of financial health, because I really think the reason why a lot of people fall into economic exclusion is because they are unable to manage the resources at their disposal when the resources were even coming. But again, I think the conversation has been very great today, and I look forward to more of this so that we can begin to put resources together. Somebody talked about framework. At the Lagos Business School, we've also we work in partnership with Dalberg Design and Dalberg Research to build a customer segmentation framework where we're able to put different, Nigerians build different personas that define every Nigerian. We call some vulnerable believers who believe in religious institutions. If you take any financial product through their religious heads, they will do anything, just to use those products. So the method of even engaging them, they differ. Some of them you have to go through their imams. Some of them you have to go through their megiris. There are the ones we call the questioning cultivators. There are the digital youth. So we built 6 personas. The report is really available online. If you go to I wish I wasn't connecting with my phone. I would have dropped the link. But if you just
can you just drop the link for us in the chat box so that as many that would love to have access to that report?
Yes, I'm going to do that. So it's actually a multi-country study covering 6 countries, but the persona for Nigeria, for Kenya, for Tanzania, they are all there. So I'm just going to drop the link now. But so these are some of the tools that we can, we can leverage to see how we can serve these women better, given their different behavioral traits, their demography, where they live, all the things, socioeconomic factors that define them, as well as the psychometric behavior. The things that really address the question of why do women behave the way they behave, so we are able to explain that, because it's self-efficacy, they are low in digital computer skills also. Not just that, we can also say because they are impulsive. Some of them they are, some of them are, they lack trust in social institutions, or some of them they trust their informal networks more than the banks. So how can we serve them betterly? I think I have to stop here, and I have dropped the link now, right?
Yeah, you have. Thank you very much.
All right, it's a pleasure having on this call with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you for, harmonizing our voice. Thank you for also increasing the volume for us there. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for showing your support for financial inclusion, despite the fact that you are a man. I know you have been, yes, I know you have been an advocate of financial inclusion, especially for women at the Lagos Business School. So we do appreciate your support and your comments. So we have the link. Emmanuel has dropped the link in the chat box, in the chat room. So for as many that would love to have access to that document, you can. The question here that I have here, okay, what role does religion and cultural practice? I think Emmanuel spoke to that already, so that we do not have to plug that issue, where he spoke about, meeting imams and pastors to be able to reach some of those people. And he also said that there are some women, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, where you can't even have access to them except you go through their husband. And I'm sure Tolu also said that too earlier. Okay, so Ruth, I don't know if you would be able to take this. You are the pension guru. And so let's talk about, we know pension services are also a form of financial inclusion for women. And so women and pension services. So what can women do? How would they be able to, what can women do to help them understand the suitability of these services to them? How do we help women to understand that, the pension services is something that they also need to know, whether a rural woman or the urban woman, that's a way of including the women too, that I know. So I think you would have to speak to that.
Thank you. In fact, before I even answer that question, I think women are the most suitable candidates when it comes to saving for pension. And the reason is basically the fact that women are very financially disciplined and they have better saving habits than men. So automatically, because of that particular profile, it means they can easily be able to save for a long-term investment. The only challenge is that they don't have education around how to do it. They have no recollection of what products and how do you get there. And they also are risk averse in terms of their gender. So some of the things that can be done basically to just empower this lady, whether at a top or a lower level, is consumer education, or rather what we just call financial education. So consistent communication to them on the need for these particular products, where they can be accessed, how easily they are able to subscribe to them, and what is the benefit in the long term is the first key thing, because they need to understand the benefit, the how, and then now move towards the what needs to be done. The other thing is, just a second. Sorry, the other thing is basically promoting women's access to retirement savings, and bringing these products especially to institutions or industries that are predominantly employing women, and also perhaps relaxing the eligibility requirements of those particular entry into those particular products, providing financial incentives tailored specifically for women, tax reliefs, the level and frequency of women's contribution, make it a bit more flexible, especially to the informal person, make it easy for access, do some sort of risk assessment, because like I said, women are risk averse in their decisions. So basically, to enable them make sound investment decision, a basic risk profile can be done, and they are able to confidently invest in assets that can give you or improve their return. But also looking at in terms of entitlement, bridging the gender gap also comes with something called age, allowing equalizing the retirement age so that men and women have got access to almost similar investments at the point they retire, and also increasing entitlements by allowing spouses to bring together their pension rights and enjoy at the point they exit or they retire, so that they can enjoy these benefits. But I will go back again. The key thing is on the education. They need to understand why it is important for them to save. They need to have access to those particular products, and they need to be assessed in terms of a risk profile where they can be guided appropriately on how to make sound investment decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you for doing justice to that. And just like Emmanuel said earlier, everything comes down to financial education. Financial education, and the truth is, for us to achieve, financial inclusion, for us to break the bias in financial inclusion, we need to go out there and preach the gospel, educate as many people as we can, ensure that a lot of people are educated. Like Tolu was sharing, the need of women is not just credit needs. A lot of them, as it is today, we see that the need for various women today is financial education. As many women that are educated, I think are financially educated, the more women that are financially, the more financially liberated we have, women we have today, even in Africa. And so I would also ask join us to also drop our email addresses in the chat box, so that we can have, we can share the link of this video with us, and we can always go back. And you have any further questions, maybe for any of the panelists, or you want to add, just like Emmanuel has added, you can just do a mail to editor@financialinclusion.org. And so on the final run, Tolu, I do not know, Tariro has to leave us now. She has left the call. So I have only Tolu and Ruth on the panel as a panelist left here. So I don't know, Tolu, any final words for us on this topic that you would like to share?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel happens to be he doesn't know me. I don't think he recognizes me again, but I was a student last year on the Sustainable Financial Inclusion Model, business model. I hope I got it right.
Yes, I remember it. It's a pleasure to have
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. And I just want to say that for financial inclusion to be something that's achievable, because in Nigeria, using Nigerian context now, we've had this persistent number that have removed to shift, that have refused to shift. I think in really being truthful and honest with ourselves, are we really doing what we need to do when it comes to financial inclusion for women? And when we are talking about women now, I'm talking about rural women, so I'm biased in favor of rural women. Are we really doing what it takes? So we have a lot of people that they're talking about financial inclusion, but they don't know and they're talking about rural women, but they also do not know these rural women. They don't understand their motivations. They don't understand their needs. They don't understand what the challenges are. I think for us to really be able to have a breakthrough, we all need to go back to the drawing board. We all need to really understand what the challenges are, and then begin to co-create and co-design. And when I mean co-creation, not just between, maybe myself and Esther, I'm talking about between us and the people that will need the services, that will use the financial services. Let's begin to co-create with them. Community-driven interventions is the only way forward, not community-based interventions. Community-based is what we've been doing for a long time, and we're still at the stage where we are right now, where a lot of interventions and a lot of policies that we are bringing is not working. We need to go back to the basics. We need to ensure that power is really given to the people that we are bringing these policies, these products to. But that will be all from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tolu. It was really nice hearing from you. Ruth, you want to give us your final message?
Yes, I guess the fact that we are here, we are already solving a problem. Driving these conversations are what largely these conversations are what are going to bridge the gender parity and also financial inclusion. I like the fact that one of the Sustainable Development Goals speaks to reduction of poverty and also achieving gender equality. And within the last few years, we have seen this critical issue being addressed slowly. But more importantly is what Tolu has raised. It's about a collective responsibility, both the public and the private driving partnerships. Communities need to shift, attitudes that hold back women. And I would want to use a very good example of Germany, where Angela Merkel at some point sponsored a movement in 2015 that brought together the government, the social media, the science and technology partners, that drove leading companies to promote representation of women in both management opportunities and also economic empowerment. And I believe once we are able to get to that position and understand that it is a collective responsibility that all of us play a role in, whether a lady or a man, then we would be achieving the intended purpose of driving these conversations on financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I appreciate your contribution. I appreciate it. And on the final note, I would like to give one of our audience an opportunity to just add to this. I don't know if there's anyone, the first person to raise their hands. So the floor is opened. If you have any word for us on this topic, then you have the floor now. Nobody? Okay, on that note, I would like to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. Thank you so much for taking out time to listen to us. Like all our panelists have said, It's a collective responsibility. And you know, we have emphasized it here again and again that the men are our allies. We cannot do it all by ourselves alone as women. And that's why we had a lot of men on this call. As a matter of fact, I was trying to count, you know, the number of men we have. I think we have more men than women, even if I'm right. But I want to thank and appreciate everyone who has taken their time to be here. And I hope we took notes. And we're going back to various organizations, various businesses, and various pieces of work to add value to the lives of our customers, to the lives of the people that we serve, and ensure that we break the gender bias, not only for the women, but and as we break the gender bias for the women, we also carry the men along and use them as our tool for breaking the gender bias for women in financial inclusion. Thank you. I hand over back to the Secretariat of the Financial Inclusion Africa.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's been a wonderful experience here today, listening to everybody speak on the issue of discussion. I want to thank everybody that have joined, in the US, from Nigeria, from Zambia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Cameroon, Gambia. I recognize all the countries present here today, both on Facebook, YouTube Live, and all the streaming platforms. It's nice to have you back here again, and we appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your time with us. To the moderator of the day, Esther Balogun, Esther Adiola Balogun, thank you for a good job. To Tolu, thank you to Ruth, to Tariro, thank you for the good job. The discussion continues. This is not the end of it. The discussion still continues. In a couple of weeks, the people that have been nominated for the Women Financial Inclusion Awards at 2022 in Africa, we're also going to have them on this platform. I hope by the end of the day, the results would have been out, and it will be a nice thing to have them on this platform also to share their experiences on how they have been faring in the financial inclusion in Africa. And on a sign-off note, it's nice having you for the past 2 hours, and it's been a great and wonderful time. To Emmanuel Mukoro, please kindly reach us to us. I think we have a lot to work on together. It's nice having you all. I wish you all a beautiful evening, a beautiful morning, and a beautiful day out there. Thank you. Let us all work to break the gender bias. Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
Financial services.
The world is at the cusp of a digital revolution. This phenomenon is being witnessed across all sectors of the global economy. And Africa, obviously, is not left behind.
The surge of digital financial services across the continent plays a major role in the drive to adopt technology in every business sector.
I agree that a major in the economic fortunes of Africans is to leverage on financial technology to reach the last mile.
And so welcome to the FinTech Africa TV program, which is set to demystify, educate, enlighten, and clear all doubts as it relates to fintechs, mobile money, cybersecurity, cryptocurrencies, blockchain operations, and digital financial transactions.
We bring you all the scoop, latest interviews, events, and best practices to watch out for as you go about your online transactions, checking fraud elements, and protecting your digital identities from scammers.
And so join me, Coco Lumon,
and Efanante on all our digital platforms from our studio right here in the heart of Accra, Ghana, for empowered content within the fintech ecosystem.
Thank you all. You have a very beautiful day. Please kindly drop your email if you have not done so. We would like to take them. Thank you, everybody. I'll be signing out right now. Thank you.
Thank you.